Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Dax Podcast, the only live podcast based in China. This week, as you already know, we are coming with you with our virtual book tour, where we have special guests who are authors, especially based in China. And today, we are coming to delve into the books they have written. Today will be one of the enjoyable episodes because we are coming to talk about no other type of book but about a romance book. And I know you will really enjoy it. Today, our author is Ari Rose, and she has lived in several countries in the US, Abu Dhabi, China, and several places. In her book, she has titled Makayla Eastwood, and I it's a nice book and you really enjoy it. In her latest tale, follow Makayla Eastwood, a young school teacher who travels to the UAE for work and finds love during the worst time of her life. Join Makayla as she explores international love. In fact, you never understand this until you travel out of your country, where you don't meet your countrymates, you don't meet anybody, you meet people out of your race, people out of different mindset altogether. And you have always had the mindset, oh, I need that black lady or that white lady, where you have nobody. And the feeling is so different. Without wasting my time, let us welcome our author. Hi, Ari. How are you doing?
Thank you. You did an amazing job introducing me. I appreciate that. And thank you for having me. Hello to all your listeners. Thank you for having me again and for listening. Thank you.
Wow. I'm so happy to have you today because we are coming to talk about a romantic genre book. And
Yes.
actually, this has been one of the first romantic books I have read. Interesting. I know you are bringing more sweet things here today to share with us. Now, who is Ari Rose?
Whew. So Ari Rouse, it's a pseudonym. I created a pseudonym because I am a educator. I work here in China in the education field, and I wanted to separate both my publication work from my work and from the novel writing. So Ari, just to give you a little bit background about me, so Ari is originally from parents are originally from the Dutch Caribbean islands, an island called Saint Eustatius, super small. It's about 3,200 people that live on the island. Amazing place to visit. Beautiful black sand and dormant volcano to visit. So if you're ever in the neighborhood, just go ahead and pop on over. So originally from New York, grew up in the Caribbean, and then came back to South Florida to live. Did my master's or my graduate degree in education, and kind of always had a passion for writing. Um, Going back to where I was in the Caribbean, my mother used to work in a library, and there was like some sort of like a competition of some sort. I remember this like going way back to like grade 3 or 4, and they had a competition, and I wanted to participate. And
Yeah,
participating in it, there are like two components. They had like a cover design and then the composition part. And I tried out for both. I wanted to win both. And
yeah,
2 weeks later, I did my piece. 2 weeks later, and I didn't win the composition part, which is the part of the book, the storyline. But I did win the design part of the book. So
oh
that was
wow,
great. I think that was like my earliest memory of like publishing or being a part of the publication process of any type
yeah,
of book. And then when I came back to the US to live, I remember like my dad lives in New York, and I remember going down to there's this street called 125th Street in Harlem. And in the 90s and the 80s, I'm telling my age, in the 90s and the 80s, there were
yeah,
like loads of different vendors and stuff that would be selling like different things that's made for like black and brown people. And I
yeah,
remember getting a hold, there was an author there, like not author, but like a vendor of some sort. He was
yeah,
selling different books from uh, authors like Zane and Eric Jerome Dickey. And I remember being like, I want to say like 15, 16. And I was like, "Oh, the cover looks great." You know, you always look at the cover of a book, and I was like, "The cover
Exactly.
looks great," and
The
it's like
cover
black and
will
brown,
attract you.
right? And so I picked it up, and I was like, "Oh, first of all, it's like black and brown people on the outside of the book, so it might be
Yeah.
good to read, right?" And so I picked it up and took it home, and I was hooked. This was like age 15, 16. And
Yes.
then, I kept reading different types of books by these authors and getting even more hooked on the different types of storylines or narrative produced by those authors. And then, I guess later on, fast forwarding, I kind of like put reading aside because I was focusing heavily on like graduate school and finding work and teaching and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And then an opportunity came about where I had an opportunity while working in Broward County as a teacher to work internationally. And that's how I ended up in the Middle East. And in the Middle East, the
Yeah.
schedule was so different to what I was used teaching in Broward County, which is in South Florida.
What made it
And
different?
it's just the scheduling. So there, I found myself as a new teacher in South Florida, working a lot of hours. I had time where I would take home numerous papers to grade, and just it took up a lot of time. And then when I moved to the Middle East, it was like, oh, I have more time to myself. And with that extra time, what do I
Yeah.
do? Like, what do I do, right? And
Yeah.
so part of me was like, okay, pick up reading again. Because I remember, on 125th Street, having that ability to find that author's book. And I started reading again. I had a lot of extra time, especially during Ramadan. Ramadan is amazing. There's not that much work to be done in the UAE. You still teach, but of course, it's helpful to have that break. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I picked up reading again. And then in that time, I was also uh, in the market for love as well. And, exploring love and exploring dating in a foreign country, not seeing a lot of people that look like me, black or brown, right? And so it was like,
Yes.
well, I got to be open to interracial or intercultural relationships with not just Emiratis, but like, other countries that were living there. And so many different countries that are being represented in the Middle East. And
Yes.
after that didn't work, I was like, okay,
It didn't
let me,
work.
oh no, no. And so I was like, all right, let me look into, something to keep me busy. And it resulted into me getting back into these types of books again, like your Eric Jerome Dickey and your Zane types of books, right? And so after a while, it was just like, oh, I'm getting tired of reading the same narrative. Like everything is taking place in the US. It's like, I want something a little bit more, reflective of
Different.
where I'm at. And I
Yeah.
couldn't find anything like representative black and brown people, specifically in the Middle East, that's talking about finding love. And so something hit me, and I was like, I can write my own. Why can't I write my own, right? And
Yeah.
so I picked up a pen and paper and I just started writing. I didn't think about the content, of course, not knowing anything of the process of publishing a book.
Yes.
And so I just started writing and scene after scene and steamy scenes and more steamy scenes. And then next chapter. And I'm like, okay, how do I add a little bit more dramatic flair? And I just kept
Yeah.
writing. And so that took me, that process, I would say, took me about 6 months. And
6 months.
the book was done. And that's how
Mm.
I ended up here. Just passion project, starting to write Makayla Eastwood, trying to bring in that cultural aspect of the Middle East, being a
Yeah.
Westerner, being black and brown, trying to find love, showing everyone how amazing UAE is, And
Yeah.
so, yeah, and that's how that book came about.
Wow, that's so nice to hear. To our viewers who are watching live, we are with our author today, and the book is all about love. The book is about someone moving from the US to the UAE to find love. Let's guess what happened, and today we are coming to discuss about that. I know we all deserve love and everybody deserves love. So that is why today we are here to talk and discuss about her book. I have not finished reading the book, but I have really enjoyed every part of the book. In fact, we have Fat Crack watching. He is one of our favorite audience. He said, he said, "Hello, could Ari teach me how to do arts and crafts so I can paint a lovely portrait of ducks for my living room wall?" Okay, she'll do that. She'll help you with that. That I need a book about that. Oh, this guy.
You're
Okay, Jenny
famous.
is also watching live. Wonderful story. So thank you very much for staying tuned. And yeah, if you have any question, you can comment in the comment section as we are about to discuss. Now, this book mainly focused on finding love in the UAE. Before we talk even about that, how was the love story before moving to the UAE?
Of the book of what are you referencing?
Yes, of the book.
Starting off the book. So this in the beginning of the book, it starts off with Makayla. Her mom passes away, and she's trying just to find herself and finding her identity and just finding purpose. And in the
Yeah,
midst of her mother passing away, her fiance at the time did something that causes the relationship to end. And now she's at her wits end. What do I do? What's next? And that's
yeah.
when that opportunity, similar to my story as far as moving to the UAE, but it's not about me, that she moves to the UAE to for work as a teacher. And so, and that was
Wait,
the other thing
sorry
too,
to
like,
interrupt you.
uh-huh.
Are you saying it's not a true story? I thought it was entirely your story. You
No,
also
it's,
moved to the UAE.
I did. That's quite similar part to me and Makayla.
Wow, interesting. Sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to be sure about that. The book sounded so real and so true.
So true. I'm good. I'm happy to know that I was able to tap into that for you because that's my main point in writing. Can I make it as realistic as possible? And
Yeah.
yes, so it starts off with the main character moving to the UAE and just learning the new culture, learning about finding herself as well in this new environment. And she meets a very, very handsome
Wait,
guy.
before you even talk about UAE, we are still not in UAE yet. So when I was reading the book, I reached the part where she was with this man, Will.
Hmm.
She was with Will, and Will
Correct.
was, yeah, Will was her, is it husband? And sh- she was taking care of all the bills,
Yep.
everything, but she was just still in that situation. I know
Yep.
there are so many people who are doing that. So many ladies in this current life who are in the point of paying bills, utilities, and everything. What advice will you give to such people?
Woo! You put me on the spot with that one. I say do what's best for you. As Makayla did in her story, she had to find herself. And I always try to encourage girls and women, get out of your box. Like once you get out of your box of friends and network in your world, you see things in a different perspective. You see things in a different light. And you sometimes you literally have to get up and move. My motto is you're not a tree, you can get up and move. And so move and you see things differently, or you can see things clearer. It might be the next state over or the next city over. It doesn't have to be something as dramatic as Makayla moving from the US all the way to the Middle East. But
Yeah.
move away, take some time for yourself to try to regroup and understand the situation. And I know everyone's situation is different. I didn't try to go too detailed with Makayla as far as like if there were any abuse or anything
Yes.
within that relationship, but definitely do it in a safe way if it gets you to understand the larger scope of your relationship and make a decision based on that.
That is a very good advice. In fact, you have made me be thinking about so many people. Sometimes they would like to be out of the box, but being out of the box to the extent of thinking of moving to another country of total different culture, everything. I personally coming to China, it was a bold decision, and I've had so many people saying that was a very tough decision to take. In your personal life, you personally, what really encouraged you to move to the UAE whilst in the US?
Money. For those listeners, it's a very lucrative position to be in as an educator outside of your home country. I know it does take a lot of gall, a lot of strength and bravery to pick up and leave for any
Yeah,
person. Um, but once you have, I'm joking, but money is a part of it. But for
yeah,
me too, because I had already did my master's and I was working on just learning the craft a lot more, and I wanted to extend myself a little bit more. And so having that opportunity to see teaching and learning from a different perspective in a country as young, you would think that the country's old, but it's a very young country. The middle, specifically Abu Dhabi and Dubai, when it comes to the educational structure and
yeah,
how things are run. Like how does it look? How do you take what you've learned in the U.S. and implement it into that environment? But yes, I totally agree with you. Moving from one place to the other is a big leap, and I just say do whatever you're comfortable about doing in a safe way. And like
yeah,
I said, if it's not moving to a big country like what I've done and our main character, Makayla, has done, definitely move to the next state over. Move, even if it's for a year, you can do anything for a year that I've had to learn. Anything can be done for a year. And so try it out if it makes you enjoy yourself a lot more and enjoy your journey of what's called life a lot
yeah.
more. Tech definitely take that initiative and get it done.
Mm, that's so interesting, and it's a very good advice to so many people who are doubting of moving to another country or anything else. Today we are talking about love, so I'd like us to really talk about love. With Makayla's story, now she moved to the UAE. Now, before even leaving the US to the UAE, she didn't have a good relationship, so she was in the UAE single. When she was there, she was expecting to have someone who is the same as her, in the same race, probably a black or brown. And I know we have so many people who also have this mindset. I personally, when I came to China in the first time, I always wanted to have nobody than somebody African, even somebody from my country, not just even African, somebody from my country, the same cultures. But with time, we realized that the mindset changed. Now we weren't getting the people we wanted. We realized that we met people who were from different race, but we really clicked and we're really connected so much. What is your take on that personally, being in a different culture in this situation?
It's definitely something that you have to be able to be flexible with. Um, you can't think that, and I really do think international living is for individuals that can be not just flexible but be open minded. I'm not asking you to conform to the cultural expectations of where you are, but necessarily to hear them out, just to hear their perspectives on life and be kind, be generous and have humility when you talk to these people. Initially, when I went to the UAE, a lot of people were like, "Oh, from a Christian background, they're like, you're going to a like a Arab country. It's gonna be different."
Yes.
The people were so lovely. They were not pushing their agenda on you, even though you're hearing the call of prayer so often. It was just so welcoming to be there. So, with that being said, to answer your question, yes, I do agree that you do have to be open to learning about different cultures and expectations, just like physical touch and all that stuff in the UAE is not, it's illegal. And so
Yeah.
just learning things like that before coming and doing a little bit of due diligence to learn about the culture will be helpful. But being open, it's definitely the first time that I really got to see other people from other countries. Even though South Florida is a melting pot, I wouldn't
Yes.
necessarily say in my box of friends that I would have known someone from South Africa or someone from Ghana or someone from from the
Different.
UK. I mean,
Yeah.
or the Ukraine. Like you wouldn't necessarily meet those people if you're busy and doing your own thing. I would say in South Florida, but that was just my experience. And so meeting different cultures and hearing the way that they love and learning ways, especially in places like India and how they have to, get married out knowing the other person in some cases. And so it's just like, okay, it's different, and I have to understand that that's how their lifestyles are, and just to embrace it and be kind to others. Like that's the big takeaway I got from living in the Middle East. Not just love each other, not in a romantic way, but be kind and just be
Yeah,
humble with
being open
people.
minded.
Yeah.
Wow. We have Davina Rose watching love, sending love emoji to us all. And to our viewers who are watching live, we are talking about the book title Ari Rose, Makayla Eastwood, who left the US to the UAE to find love. And yeah, in fact, when I was reading the book, I reached a point where Makayla was now in the UAE, and
Yep.
now she started meeting new people. But then she was finding it very hard to let it go of the past and find new people.
I like how you tied that in.
I have been in such situation before, you know, and when there's this situation, there's always trust issues and challenges. Probably there will be someone who will be better than that person, but it's always hard to move on. And the sad part is being in a foreign country. What is your take on this? And
I
what,
think
yeah,
being in a foreign country, it literally forces you to have to let go. You have to deal with it. I'm a big advocate for therapy. I'm a school counselor myself. um, Getting therapy is important for helping you to close that chapter, but being in a different country, a different setting, would definitely build some of that foundation for
yeah,
letting go. And letting go is hard, especially if you spend a lot of time with this other person. Letting go is hard, especially if you don't know where to start with letting go. But that's a part of your journey. That's a part of identifying yourself, your self worth, learning how to move forward and growing and looking at ways to grow, and definitely surrounding yourself with positive people. When you see, and that's why I was talking a little bit about meeting people from other countries, they see things differently. And a lot of the
yeah,
times, or I would say, I've learned to hang around with a lot more positive people. And in my own journey of love, I feel like that also has helped me by just being in a positive mindset and being around positive people, because negativity like company. So when you're surrounded by negative people, it doesn't help the cause of moving forward. So yeah, I would encourage you to hang around positive people.
yeah, indeed, we should be around with positive people. When Makayla was in the UAE, those who have not gotten the book, do well to get the book so that you can really relate. It's very an interesting book that many of us can relate. We have Maliva Islands. I don't know if I pronounce the name well. Enlightening conversation. In fact, being in an international world, I personally coming to China, I realized that dating someone is so difficult for foreigners, especially the females. And in the book, Makayla also mentioned that most of these men, they are not serious with this relationship. They even have people back home in their own countries, and because of time difference, it's very hard for them. And this is really true.
So
Coming to
real,
China,
so
I've heard
real,
so many people talking about these.
so
And
real.
it, yeah, what has brought up all these things. Must we say that we cannot have real relationship when we are outside our country or in an international world?
That's a big element that I wanted to bring in because it's so real to international love and relationships. You never know what the other person have going on in their home country. And so
Yeah.
again, you got to do your due diligence and you have to really open those channels of communication because if you're not really having great conversation and honest conversation with these other people, then you're robbing yourself of what those red flags that you can pick up. So if you're because you're not in the home country, right? So how
Yeah.
else are you going to pick up some of those red flags, like habits that they have, or something they say? Oh, you didn't say that last month. That didn't match up to what you're telling me today, right? So you really
Yeah.
have to do your due diligence and really understand um, what's happening and being purposeful with who you're dating and why you're dating. There are some people, and we're not knocking them. For everyone, for each person, it's their own. They're just here to have fun, and that's okay. If that's what you're willing to do, then that's what you do. And then there are others that do want to have something serious, and I feel like it's your responsibility to also do your due diligence and finding out a lot more than from the other person. But it's
Mm.
very common, very common.
So are you saying that we should always be real and tell people whether we want to have fun or we want to have something serious? That's what you are
I,
saying.
Absolutely. I think if you're going to start any type of relationship, and we're grown, we're not kids. If we're grown, we can be honest and truthful and say that's what we want. We want to play the field, then the other person, if you're open and willing to it, then that's the case. If not, we can go our separate ways and move forward. But I feel like trust is always the foundation to any relationship. And if you start off with a lie, then what direction can a relationship go?
Hmm. This is something I can really relate. Being in China, leaving Ghana, coming to China, and to our viewers who are also in the international world, that is where you can really relate. If you are not in this kind of environment, you might not really understand what we are trying to say. But I've realized that most of the time, um, ladies are always worried that men are the ones who are always hiding. Why is it so? Why is it like that? Because I don't get it. Most of the time, it's men who are always criticized that they have something, they have somebody back home. Why is it that as a lady? Why?
Well, I can't speak for all women, but I can maybe shed a little bit light on that when we talk about past trauma and having that wall up, right? And so when that wall is up, your first impression of any person is going to always have like, oh, there's a red flag here, there's another red flag here, there's another red flag. So you always have
Yeah.
your wall up, right, because of past trauma. But I do also think that from the other person, the guy or whoever from Ghana or from wherever, like you do, knowing that you do have to come in with an understanding of trying to alleviate some of those worries and those stresses as a leader or as a man. So I feel like it both have a responsibility. And I can only imagine for a person that's always being hit with those type of questions or concerns that you constantly have to, you know, not necessarily pretend, but you always have to protect yourself in that manner. Listen, why I haven't done anything to you for you to think that I have a whole new family somewhere else. But
Yeah.
you got to go through the journey. You got to go through that process of getting to know the other person and really tapping into what traumas they have. And if those traumas are something that you're willing to work with, then you can kind of work through it if you can. But if not, that's a good indicator for a guy if she's holding on to a lot of these trauma. Hey, it's a lot of plenty of fishes in the ocean, so you can check and look for someone else.
Yeah, when I was reading your book, when I reached that point, I was like, Makayla is really right in some points. Because from my experience being in China, where we have different environment altogether, I realized that most of the relationship foreigners have end up being zero. Most. of them, most of these relationship end up being zero. Must
I
we?
do I do think that a large part of being an expat too is that we move around a lot. Like
Yeah.
it's not common where you would see an expat from any country live in one place for 10 years or more, right? And so with that notion, I think maybe that could be a reason why a lot of the relationships doesn't get more serious and uh, lead into marriage of some sort if that's what they're looking for. But I do understand the challenge. I do, and it is hard to find something that can last, but it does
Mm,
exist. It does exist. You can find love here, not just in China. I also live in China. You can find love in the UAE. Matter of fact, I have three friends right now. One they met in Korea, South Korea, and then the other one met her husband here in China, and they're beautiful kids. So there are success stories of Black love internationally, and so I wanted to bring that out, and not just Makayla, but I have another book that I wanted to share with you a little bit later, and
okay.
bringing that out as well.
Mm, wow. I'm so happy that you were able to address societal issues in a very sweet and nice way in a form of book. And this is something so many people can relate. And this is really true. I can't believe you are telling me this is just something not real. Wow. Interesting. Now, wait, when I was reading, it got to a point. Initially, Makela never wanted to have anybody in UAE, probably because of the different culture and everything. But with time, I most guys always say the system will make you like the people. Now, when she was in the UAE, she never found anyone she really wanted her spec. So she was forced to, should I say forced? Do you think that must people compromise? Or is it a
I
form
do.
of compromising?
I would think so. I would think so. In the book, Michaela ended up going on Tinder, and I wanted to bring in a modern day approach to finding love because a lot of people do use some sort of social media or some app to find love. And in
Yeah.
the story, even though she wanted to find love while in the UAE, it turned out that the person that she did meet has that urban flair of New York. He's coming, his cultural background is from the Middle East, but he's quite a New Yorker. And so that's where Michaela taps into this character, Muhammad, and find that bond, that commonality with what people look for when they're dating and trying to find love. And she found that in Muhammad. So it does take some compromising. I do think that she had some exposure to the Arabic culture, and so that's why she was open to dating Muhammad.
Mm, interesting. That is compromising in some way. I'm glad you have been so real about this in some way because I remember coming to China, we had some ladies those days when you just approach them, they don't even listen to you. But with time, with time, they were so flexible, they ended up with guys they never wanted to have with because there was nobody, they didn't have their spec in that environment, in that area. Interesting. Now, Makayla went in for somebody from a different culture, a Muslim from different religion, all together. I don't know, in your personal life or something, have you ever experienced that? And so many people, and from my experience, I feel it's not easy having someone in different culture. They have different mindset. Even how to flirt is different. Everything is totally different. What is your take on someone in this point or in this situation?
I think that's a huge question. Reason because there's different elements to interracial dating. You have the cultural aspect, then you have the religion aspect of it. And so it's too broad. We don't have enough time to talk about it. But
Yeah.
yes, it is a challenge. I do know several people that are in interracial relationships and what it takes. And so in Muhammad's case, an Arabic individual, a Muslim person, and how he looks at the role of a woman and her having to be like, okay, I'm okay to doing XYZ. And then it's like, no, that's not what I want to do. And so just yo-yoing in between, do I want to conform? Do I not want to conform in that particular instance or that storyline, right? But there's so many different cultures. I'm sure dating someone here in China, there are a lot of cultural norms that you have to question if that's
Yeah.
something that you can adapt to or not, and how does that influence some of these relationship with people. It's not just the individual. You are in a relationship with their whole family. And so
Yeah.
how do you balance all of that when you're coming from, for me, a Western environment where you date, but you're not dating the person and their family. You're dating that individual. And so looking at, okay, I don't just have to deal with him. I have to deal with maybe his mom, who may not even like me because I'm not, following the Arabic culture or the Muslim practice in this case. But I'm sure quite similarly here, you can have some of those challenges.
Yeah. Those challenges, in fact, if you are going into that, you should be very open minded and be expectant of these. And don't expect people to understand you from your background. You have to be open minded to unlearn and relearn something new, something which can make the two of you very okay and very happy. And I love how the storyline was moving. And this is something so many of us can relate. Even apart from racial marriages or relationships. I feel like, I don't know from the Caribbeans, but in my country we have several tribes, different tribes in my country. So even sometimes marrying a different tribe from the same
Right.
country comes with
It's
these
different.
kind of challenges. And even without even those tribes, even marrying somebody from your same society, you might have different mindsets, things that makes
Absolutely.
you happy. So I feel like it's almost the same. The most important thing is you should have things in common, things that both of you really like. And if you have that vibe, it will be very easy, irrespective of the different cultures, the different background, everything. And I love how the storyline was going. Now, the question I would like to ask, we were talking about most interracial relationships end up being nothing. In China, from my experience, most guys will say that just have the relationship, don't worry yourself. The
Yeah.
system itself will end the relationship.
Wow.
The system
That's
itself will
hard.
end the relationship.
That's hard.
Yeah, because maybe if you leave the country, for example, China, and you go to your country, long distance, and then automatically it has to end. What is your take on this to people who have this kind of mindset when they are in relationship with people in different country altogether?
I think if it's something you want to make it work, it will work. No matter if you're here or there's some sort of distance situation happening, long distance relationship is a thing. And so if you want it to work, you can make it work. And I'm sure, long distance in itself, types of relationship has challenges. And so you have to figure out what works for you. Even though Makayla, you haven't got to the end of the book, but Makayla did not end up in an interracial relationship at the end of the book, but definitely something that she had to explore and to learn and to kind of grow from. And I didn't want it to be the twist that happens midway in the book. I didn't want it to be the reason why Makayla and Muhammad have their challenges was not necessarily a cultural thing. I wanted it to be more of an individual thing that his character and his mindset is part of the reasons why things kind of went away. Because I
Yeah.
just wanted to go away from that, especially being in the UAE. I was also having a great time there as far as like meeting new people. I worked a lot with Emiratis, and so I didn't want to bring a negative piece to the book. I wanted to keep it safe and to keep it, where she does explore that part of her, because that's where she was in the Middle East, and exploring the luxury that comes along with it.
Yeah, I love that part of your story where the question I would like to ask is, it's like social media makes us think that some people are different, they are very bad. And you mentioned that in the book, where when your first time arriving in the UAE, you are like surprised,
Hmm.
like from the environment, from the people, and everything. What is your take after living, moving to several countries, UAE, China, and other countries? What is your take about these social media and what they try to portray about others?
Wow, that's a loadful question as well. Definitely, let's start with the Middle East. I honestly didn't have any real concept of what the Middle East was when I initially went over to work. All I knew
Yeah.
was it was far. That's all I knew, that it was far from where I was, and
Okay.
the people were different. And so when I got there and I just saw how grand things were, like if you've ever been, to the listeners, if you ever get an opportunity to go to the Middle East, or if you have been there, it's so grand, it's so different, it's so advanced to what you would see in other places. And I think for the most part, I was taken back by the development, the design, excuse me, of
Yeah.
the buildings and different things. And that was really in awe. Just the amazing perfume, the shopping galore. Like there's so many things that you wouldn't necessarily think is actually there. So one, I didn't really have any big idea of the Middle East. And then as
Yeah.
far as uh, China, of course, the U.S. and China, there's some developments there, and you do have some direction of thinking, this is not where you want to be, but it's also a really cool place. The people are nice. Of course, it's different. It's not going to be like Abu Dhabi or Dubai. It has this different feel to it. Of course, the culture is different. The language is a big part. If you don't understand um,
Yeah.
Mandarin, it's a great place or great language to learn or come here and learn. But it has some amazing things here as well. I am actually in a big city. I'm in Shanghai, super, super big city. Think of it as like your New York of China. And it's really good. People here are good. You do have expats that also live here from all walks of life. You have Americans, you have people from different countries in Africa, you have South Africans, you have so many different people that live here, and you do get an opportunity, just like I did in the Middle East, to kind of learn and grow from other cultures as well. So if you're open-minded to being in an environment to learn and grow, definitely take advantage of either countries. And I'm sure there are other great countries like India, which I haven't done yet, or Malaysia, other great countries where a lot of expats go to teach, so, or to work. It's not only about teaching, because there's other professions that people come
Yeah.
over here to do. And so, yeah, I would strongly encourage anyone that wants something different, want a little bit more excitement, to take advantage of it and to be open minded, because not everyone thinks the way that you think. And not everything that you have to say is as important as you think it is. Sometimes you
Yeah.
do have to be quiet, as to why I started writing. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, so take advantage of that.
Wow. I'm glad this your book will help on several people to unlearn and relearn. For example, I know several people, because of what they just hear from social media and stuff, even when they travel to different country, they are just not open-minded. Oh, these people are Indians. They are like this. So they are not even willing to be open-minded, be open to listen or learn from them. Yeah. So I'm happy you also mentioned this. The most important thing is to be very open-minded. For me personally, I've learned that irrespective of we coming from different cultures, people are totally different. I can
Absolutely.
have somebody from my country which we might not really click or vibe very well, but
Right.
somebody from a different culture, environment, we might have the same mindset, the same thinking, and everything. So
Yeah,
I have come to believe
absolutely.
that I don't I don't really now believe in that. Oh, coming from the same country, the same environment. It's all about having the same mindset, like minded people, and you are good to go. So I'm very happy your book is trying to educate us in a sweet and romance way, in that way.
Yeah.
And trust me, if you have not gotten the book, get the book as soon as possible from Amazon or all the platforms, and you will surely enjoy the book. One thing I really love about the book is they are so easy to understand. And that is how it's supposed to go. I feel like every good book should be very easy for a kid to even read and understand. And I have really been enjoying it. And to our audience, get yours and thank me later. Now,
Thank you.
with the love story, I know everybody deserves love, and
Yes.
if you have not found one yet, you will surely find one yourself. One aspect that I would like to remind our audience is Makayla lost everything in terms of relationship whilst in the US. One thing I think really helped her was to come out of the box, to do something new, teaching, working, instead of being in that situation. And through that, she was able to find new people, special people, wonderful people. What advice will you give to people in this light?
Whew. What advice? I just say take the leap. Take the leap. Just take the leap. Again, if it's not in the next city over, if it's not the next state over, if it's not the next country over, take the leap if that's something that you're passionate about. But I also want to tap into your prospective authors if they ever feel like they want to write but just don't know where to start. I would just encourage you to write. Like I did, I had no idea of any novel, of any author, excuse me. I had no idea where to go. But I just want to encourage your listeners today that if you have an idea or if you have a concept, it could be a fictional or nonfiction type of work. And if you have a passion for it, I say just write. Maybe if you don't publish it this year, maybe next year you have more of an inclination to want to publish it, just write. Trust you me, it is profitable, and it is, if it's something that you are passionate about, I would encourage you to really hone into your writing.
In fact, you answered my next question, and my next question was about how did you start to write this, and why was it more about romance?
Well, to tap into my earliest memories, I remember going to New York, right? And so off of 125th, that street I was telling you about, where you have all these different like vendors selling things. Up to this day, you can still find vendors on 125th in Harlem. And once I got that book, it was kind of what I liked. It was my niche. And so I wanted to bring something in my experience of where I was living in the Middle East at the time. I wanted something that I could relate to, and not just me, but a lot of my peers that was surrounding me also was in a similar relationship like Makayla, or a situation like Makayla,
Yeah,
where they were trying to find love and they was trying to think, should I go interracially or not? And do I just go back home to the US, which Makayla ends up doing on a surprise visit, tapping
yeah.
into the book for a little bit, and encounters a really, really strange situation, and having to find love elsewhere. But definitely, tap into that if you can.
Interesting. Is this your first book?
Actually, I just published my second book this week. It's called Coined Love, Trevi Fountain Swap. And I wanted touch a little bit more on the fantasy side, trying to explore where I really find my niche. And so, yep, it's found on Amazon as well. Again, tapping into the black and the brown love and romance in an international environment. Again, there are black people that live internationally, and there is black love that happens internationally. And I wanted to bring that out again in this book, as well as like learning your identity. And I wanted to bring out a little comedic side to the book as well. So there's a lot of like wow factors in the book that you will go like,
Yeah.
oh no, she did not write that. Yes, I did. And so I brought that out in the second book. And so it's a funny read also about love and finding love. Um, and some sort of a body swap situation that's happening with the Trevi Fountain in Rome. And so get it. It's on Amazon. I really appreciate you if you could support. Again, it's on Amazon. It's called Coined Love Trevi Fountain Swap.
Mm. You said from the US story that made you love romance and everything. But I'm also thinking probably you found someone in the UAE or China or something.
Still looking, still looking.
I was just joking. So interesting. I'm glad this is not just your only book, but there's still more books, and you've published your second book already, which I'll be
Yep.
putting in the description where people can get the book to buy
Thank
and
you.
they'll really enjoy it. I have read the book and I have really enjoyed every aspect of it. And trust me, you will really enjoy it. And it's not only about enjoying, it's something you can really relate in terms of relationship. I feel like this day we have so much divorce around, so much because we don't take time to learn about love, about relationship, and all these things. And I think this book will go a long way to help so many people, especially people who are out of their country or their environment or whatsoever it is. If you could turn any book into a movie, what book will it be?
Ooh, of course, my books. Both of my books to make that known. Come on, Tyler Perry, come on.
Please then
Like
make me Mohammed. I want to be Mohammed.
come through, come through. That's all right. Yes. Well, yeah, I really had, on a serious note, I did have in mind when I wrote both of them, because as an author, you think, okay, I want to publish it first. And then you want to think, okay, I want to also now make it into either a play or a movie. Like that's just the progression of wanting
Mm.
your book more publicized, I guess. And so for sure, I would love both of those books to be um, on TV or sitcom somehow. That'd be great.
In fact, I personally, I would love. I would not just love to watch that movie. I would love to be one of the actors.
Put it out there. Put it out there. You actually do look like the main character on the outside of the book.
Really? Wow.
You can pass
So
for it.
interesting. Before this was your first book, what was the advice you wish you had known before writing your first book?
What advice, man? I would say definitely try to reach out to podcasts like yourself or like look at different authors speaking engagement, just seeing how they do things, and which is what I'm having to do now anyway. So just tap into the author platforms like on Facebook and Instagram where you can learn more about their journey. I think that's really a big help, especially when it comes to the marketing of books. Like that is not my forte. Like how do you market and how do you make your book presentable to your audience? There's
Yeah.
tons and tons of books, and how do you get yours ahead of other books? And so tapping into that and learning how to definitely market from the get go. I wish I would have learned a lot more. I'm all for just writing, keep writing, keep writing. Even if you don't publish it, it's something that you are passionate about and others to learn about. Keep writing. I'm sure it'll get somewhere sometime soon. Yeah, I wish I would have known how to tap into the online resources at the time.
This is so interesting. Even in business, I realize that most people don't usually forget about how to sell. The
Mm,
most important thing is learning how to sell. People focus on how do I get the right product, how do I get quality products,
right.
this.
How
But
does it
we all
look?
ignore how to sell. So most
Yeah,
people they import from China, they help me buy things for them, and then they say, "Oh, it's not selling." And so that is really very true, not just even in book, in every aspect. Selling,
sure.
how to sell is really, really very important. Wow,
I
our
don't.
time is yeah, yeah, finish,
Oh, I
finish
just wanted
before
to
we
add that I do think it's important to tap into other authors as well. Like I'm sure in the marketing world that when you meet another person with an MBA or you meet someone that has some background in it, that even just talking without it being like another publishing author or a business person, but just being in a space surrounded by other people in the know is also helpful.
mm, wow, that is so powerful. With I'm so concerned in some way about the title of the book. What brought about the title of the book? I feel like if it was more of some love something, I really, when I saw the title, I was not really into it. But when I read the
Mm-mm,
description, I was like, oh, somebody went to find love in UAE.
mm-mm,
Ah,
mm-mm.
when I just saw that, I was like, I have to read this book. That really attracted me. This is my honest review about this. What brought about the title?
Honestly, again, that's why I was saying to your listeners, just write. And that's what I did. I had no clue what I was doing. I had no other authors that I can tap into to say, hey, girl, make your title a lot more catchy. Like, make it something that someone could, relate to. No one can relate to Makayla Eastwood because it's the name, right? And it's the actual name of the main
Yeah.
character in the book. And that's just something I had to learn along the way as becoming and developing my craft as an author is how to make it catchy. And it ties into the markets as you were talking about, like how do you sell? How do you make it, more marketable? And so
Yeah.
something I'm learning along the way, not just the title, but also the summary in the back and, making it catchy for different audiences.
Wow, I love that spirit because I can really relate. I feel like if you have any idea, just start. Most of the time, people don't start because they are overthinking it, planning it, and they will never start. And you will learn a lot when you start. I
Yeah,
started this social media, YouTubing, and everything when I didn't know anything. And I'm so grateful I started without knowing anything. And I've
right.
learned so much along the way. With this, your book, you also started without knowing much about how to write, publishing, getting the right title. How has been the feedback, even though you didn't really, weren't really ready or prepared to write a book? How's the feeling and how's the review so far?
Actually, it was a passion project of mine where I just wanted to see what I could do. And I feel very blessed and humbled to have experienced that and experienced the journey. And now my second book is self-published. I did not go through a publishing company for that. So it's a
Mhm.
learning curve, and I would encourage any of your listeners to try it. Just to try it, make it a passion project, create a vision board, find your steps of things that you want to do so that you can have a successful year. So I just say do it.
Just do it. This is so interesting. Just do it before you even think about anything or any other things. Wow. In fact,
Absolutely.
you are now an author. But if you have to say, who is your favorite author, whether dead or alive?
There's two parts to me. There's the personal growth and development me, where I read a lot of nonfiction books, and then there's the passion project me, where I do my writing and read for pleasure. So there's two groups of people that I would enjoy doing that. But any author, I'm a quick learn. I'm not too difficult. Just match me up with anyone, and I'm happy to get any type of information. And for me, It don't even have to be an author. Like people on a everyday to day people have stories and they
Yeah.
have a journey, and it's always amazing to talk to people, especially when you're in a mindset of being open and you're being flexible and you can hear and understand and really empathize with their stories, especially love. You can imagine how many love stories there are leaving
Yeah.
Western world and coming to a different place to live. Many stories of love. So any person, it doesn't have to be an author, be great.
Mm. Wow. So far this week, I've had several authors, and I've realized that everybody everybody is writing something about their story, even if it's not their real story. It's
Mm.
almost like their own story, and it goes a long way to impact people, inspire people, motivate people, and as a guide to so many people. On that light, must we say that everyone should have a book?
For sure, 100%. Write anything that you feel like it. There's millions of people in this world, and whatever you have to share with the world, I'm sure would touch someone. Whether it's a religious piece or a fictional piece or nonfiction piece, write something, write what's in your head out and impart it to the world. I'm pretty sure someone would want to read it.
Wow, interesting. That is why this week we are hosting only authors. Authors who will come so that we will discuss what they have written, what inspired them to have this book. And that's why we have our special guest, Ari Rose. She has written one nice romantic book, which I will recommend for everyone. I have personally enjoyed it, and I know you will surely enjoy it. So, to our viewers who are watching live, who have stayed to this time, thank you very much for staying tuned. And you can check in the description box if you need any of her books. She has published her second book, and I can't wait to get that one as well to read. Don't forget to get the book, and if you need anything from her, you can contact her. Where can they reach you in case they want any collaboration, any deals, or anything?
I'm located on Instagram, Ari Rouse Story. That's ARIROUSE Stories with an S on Instagram and Facebook. Send me a DM. Let me know how you enjoyed this podcast live. Let me know any suggestions, any recommendations, and I'm happy to do any partnerships as well. Come through, Tyler Perry.
Interesting. I hope Mohammed is not here. Okay, anyway, so I'll put the link of all her books, her handles in the description box. If you want to
Thank you.
contact her, you will reach her. And before we leave, ladies and gentlemen, this is the only live podcast based in China. And every week, every time, we try to bring guests, especially people based in China, to share their story, their experience, what they are doing in China. Besides that, we have separate channels. One is Dark Spam, a channel just about lifestyle in China to show people about the modern China. And this podcast where we have guests to share what they are doing in China. And we have another channel which is Side Hustle with Dax, which is all about importation from China. China has been one of the largest economy in terms of importation production. If you need anything product from China, reach us and we will get it for you. Before we leave, Harry Rose, what are your last words before we leave?
Ooh. To all your listeners, I want to encourage you that if you do have an idea, a concept, or a vision for writing something, to just continue writing. Just publish it if you can. I do want to encourage you to travel. Black Love International does exist. Get out and travel. There are a lot of Black people you will encounter here, Black and Brown people. And be blessed. And thank you for having me.
Wow. In fact, I'm so glad to have you as one of my guests on this podcast. And in the future, I can't wait to have you discuss about your next book and what you are doing in China. And people, I'm sure so many people will also like to come to China, work in China, or whatsoever. We can't wait to have you in the future. And to our guests who are watching tomorrow, we'll be having another author, and the title of her book is manifestation of dreams. Stay tuned the same time as today, 9 p.m. China time, and we will be having guests to discuss her book, share most insight about it. Before we leave, thank you very much for staying tuned, watching to this part, and see you all. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.